dive into this episode, I want to share something that's been on my mind. The outdoors doesn't reveal who you are, it reveals who you pretend to be. I've been thinking a lot about how easily we can fool ourselves with titles, with gear, with comfort. But when you're out there, alone, in the quiet, none of that matters. You're left with the truth, and the truth can be uncomfortable, or it can be the most freeing thing in the world. And that's why I was so excited to sit down with Jordan. He's someone who's gone through that kind of truth. He didn't just survive alone, he lived it. He leaned into solitude, into discomfort, into stillness, and came out the other side with something deeper. In this conversation, we talk survival, family, faith, mindset, all of the stuff you'd expect. But what struck me the most was his humility. Jordan doesn't posture, he doesn't preach, he just shares his experience and lets it speak for itself. That's something I respect a lot. If this kind of conversation resonates with you, if you're someone who's been craving more than just surface level content, I'll give you a heads up on something we've been working on. The Silvercore Club is about to get a big upgrade. We're building a space for deeper dives, practical insights, training tips, behind the scenes thoughts, and stories that don't always make it into the public feed. It's not ready yet, but it's coming. And if you're the kind of person who values growth, capability, and connection, I think you're going to want to be there. Now, let's get on with the podcast. I'm joined today by a man who's rode with nomadic reindeer herders in Siberia, hunted wolverines with a hatchet, and became a household name after outlasting every other contestant in the grueling Arctic on the survival show alone. He's part philosopher, part frontiersman, and all heart. A man who didn't just survive the wild, but found peace and clarity in it. Whether he's teaching others to reconnect with nature or exploring life's deeper questions, his insights are raw, real, and profoundly human. Welcome to the Silvercore Podcast, Jordan Jonas.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Travis. Good to be here and appreciate the kind introduction.
Hey, I figured my job's done. I can sit back and you can do all the talking now.
Stroked my ego for a little while.
You're the very first person I've ever had who's done the podcast out in the woods with beautiful bull pines, ponderosa pines. Man, that's awesome.
Springtime, it's hard to sit inside right now, so I'm glad the connection's good enough.
Oh yeah, no, the connection's awesome. Are you just working off of like cell service, or is this like a Starlink thing?
Yeah, it is. Just cell service, so good deal.
Oh, I love it. Well, a lot of people already know who you are. Some people don't. I've actually had the opportunity to meet with one of your compatriots on season 6 alumni, Nikki Van Schendel.
Oh, cool. Oh, right on. How'd you meet her?
Well, she's been on the podcast, and she's a real cool cat. And
she's fun. Yeah.
Oh, she's so fun, and her positivity and her mindset is on point. And she recently reached out and she says, "Trav, I'm involved with this other Fox show. They've asked me to be a consultant for it." Or she didn't say it was a Fox show, I think. It was all hush hush and top secret.
Yeah, some kind of show.
Yeah, I'm involved in this other kind of show. But there's going to be like a hunting portion and contingent maybe. And like, can you come on and help out the contestants? And I'm like, sure. I know nothing about this Hollywood thing, right?
Right.
But she had me come up, introduced me to the crew. Turned out it was Sylvester Stallone's Balboa group, and it was this Fox show called Extracted. And so we went up to Whistler, and they bring these contestants in one at a time. We had to give them training and testing. And I mean, like, usually we do training as a group, but these guys couldn't see each other. And got to meet Megan Hine. She's a cool cat as well, who's a British survivalist. So interesting world that you kind of roll in with these other people who just pursue their passion, and they just end up finding these opportunities like what you've had.
Yeah, for all our love of some of the things we've lost touch with in the modern world, it's amazing the opportunities that it provides.
Yeah. Well, why do you think that is?
What's that?
Why do you think that is? Why is it that people are deeply craving?
It's so much easier to connect with people around the world who, you have a skill or an ability, and there's people that have a desire to, learn from you or whatever, and it just broadens your net so much more than you could 100 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, no kid.
It's
Well,
pretty wild. It's neat to appreciate, the blessings we have in our modern world right now, as much as there are issues to overcome. But yeah,
well,
it's pretty great. I wondered that sometimes when I was living with the natives out there, because I in Siberia. Long story. We probably get there at some point, but that's something that I thought about a lot. Like we almost live in a time where you can have the best of both worlds if you play your cards right. If you kind of we've lost a lot of some of the lessons that come in a more rural or tribal existence,
sure.
but we've gained a lot of opportunity and security at the same time. So the ability to combine those is pretty great if you can.
Yeah, and with the internet and everything, we've got the access to be able to learn all of these things that people in back in the
Oh
day
yeah.
wouldn't have that ability.
Oh
But
yeah.
but the issue is, I think, is that we're so overloaded with information that it comes in, it comes out, and people are kind of dilettantes into what they kind of get into, and that's where
Absolutely.
that's where somebody like yourself is a big value. People can go to your Instagram and check you out on Hobo Jordo, and we'll put links into the description here. But you're essentially an information concierge. They can view things through your eyes. All this info comes in, but you're out there living it, and you're doing it, and they say, "Huh, it works for him. Maybe I'm going to give it a shot."
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to reshuffle a little bit so you do have a little bit more mental space in what is a yeah an information overload world. No time, we're constantly distracted, and that's very tangible. So you almost have to force your hand at times. I actually appreciate that about heading up in the wilderness and getting outdoors. I somewhat dread when Starlink's going to be universally available, but
Yeah.
you almost have to force yourself into situations where you're disconnected in it, and then you can kind of delve more into your
Well,
undistracted mind.
I mean, it's so tempting. I mean, you got this. I was on a moose hunt in British Columbia here this last season,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to find something. I'm using the OnX and the iHunter apps, and this thing keeps popping up, and it says, "Oh, do you want to connect to satellite for text messages?" I'm like, "No, no, no." And then my wife, she does it. She's like, "I'm getting text messages. I can send and receive." And
Uh-oh.
I mean, like it's cool, but I like the fact that we disconnect and there you don't have that ability to actually reach somebody because it takes away that easy option, that easy little lifeline back to something
Absolutely. You
familiar.
almost have to force it too. It's like, and it's funny because if you go without, the modern technology, your phone, and you're up in the mountains for a week or two, you find you just don't miss it at all. It's not even day one. There's just no aspect of you that misses it. But when you have it, it just absorbs so much of your consciousness. So it's a odd thing I always find when I'm coming out of the woods, because of course I have running a little business and stuff and all this. I
Mm.
know I'm going to have a lot of messages, and I always have feel that bit of dread, like, oh man, here comes service.
Yeah. Well, that's the tough part. I mean, running a business is my justification. I'm back on social media. Like I
Yeah,
would never have social media if it
yeah,
wasn't for the business.
likewise.
But then you're on it. It's like, okay, I guess I got to put a message out, or we have to connect a little bit. And
Hmm.
I love some of the connections that I've been able to make because of it.
Hmm.
What I don't love is all the cool stuff that pops up, and my ADHD kicks into hyperdrive, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. And I start flipping through.
Yeah, we're on the vanguard of humans trying to figure out how to balance that for sure. We didn't grow up with it. We all got it, and now we got to try to figure out that balance. But it's interesting yeah, it's a challenge.
So
They got
tell,
some talented computer scientists over there hacking our
oh,
psychology.
that's exactly what they do. So tell me about Hobo Jordo. How did you come up with that?
Oh, when I guess it must have been 18 or so, and I was just working at a salad dressing factory in Idaho, and then my brother had ridden at one point, had headed off and randomly started riding freight trains and like an old time hobo. He actually loved it. He loved the freedom of it and kind of the lack of schedule and responsibility. And he rode trains for what would end up being 7 or 8 years, where he basically just lived out there and rode around like a dang bum. But he
As one does.
just kidding. No, but he was also unusual for that realm, sober. So yeah, it was able to just have a pretty rich experience and build a lot of relationships with people and all that. Anyway, he really liked it, and at one point, he's older than me, and at one point he invited me to come with him. So quit my job and headed out there, and I thought it was really neat. I've thought about it since a lot because in hindsight, I wasn't conscious of it at the time, but it really felt like a sort of a fork in the road and a bit of a rite of passage for me, because instead of just being stuck on the same routine that most people do, it kind of put me out there, got me way out of my comfort zone, and just having an adventure and new ways of thinking and doors that got opened and all that, and and eventually, yeah, it was a pretty awesome experience. That first night, it was in April, so it's still pretty cold, and we were on the High Line. It's called going through North Dakota and all that, and got a big rainstorm, and those trains go 55 miles an hour when they're up there, and I was asleep. I don't know how I did. I must have been exhausted, but I slept through the rainstorm, and I actually woke up to my brother had shimmied along the train car because he was on another one. Shimmied along back to me and like woke me up. He was like, "Oh, dude, I was hoping you, I thought you might have not woken up," which I don't know why I even thought that. But anyway, long story short, I was absolutely drenched. I was in a puddle of water. Another while, I probably would have drowned in my sleep. Got totally soaked, and it was quite the introduction to hoboing because, middle of the night, North Dakota, wind blowing. I was drenched, didn't have anything dry, and I got pretty dang cold. I remember I've never been more acutely aware of how the sun can rise but not produce heat for a period of time. Just
Yeah.
watching it, like, oh, come on. Anyway, that was a pretty intense and funny introduction to the hoboing. But then, yeah, I traveled across the country with them. We ended up in Virginia, did some, we'd do some temporary work there, and then went up the East Coast and back around, and ended up back in, North Idaho ultimately. But that also was one of the first times I'd, spent a good amount of time alone, at least enough to get from Minneapolis to Spokane or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting, it was just it was a cool experience, particularly for a young man, like just kind of see what's out there.
I'd say so. Did you ever run into the police trying to get you off or chasing
Oh
you around?
yeah, that was actually, I might have been a day or two after I got soaked there. We came into some train yard, and we had kind of done it on Ben, my brother, invited me, and I said yes, and we didn't really take time to get coached or anything by him. But so we were coming into the train yard, and he pulled up his little monocular, and he's like, "Oh shoot, they're searching the train up there. Like, we got to get off." And so we all just started. I don't know. When you're on the train, it doesn't feel like it's moving that fast at times.
But it's moving.
You got to properly dismount a train. You got to climb down the ladder, run with it, keep your feet moving, and then let go, and you can kind of run with the train and run off. I didn't realize that, and we're in a hurry, and the police were searching the train. It was still moving, so I just jumped off. Of course, your feet can't catch up on it. Face planted, rolled down the gravel, and got up, and we got away on that one. And then a lot of times they didn't care. A lot of times you'd go up to a train worker and ask them where the train was headed, and they'd advise you. I'd say that was probably the norm. Although more often you just try not to get seen just to avoid any issues. But yeah, we went to spend a night in jail in DeKalb County, Indiana, and
oh yeah,
so that was, that was an experience too. And
what was that like?
Oh, that was funny too because we were on the train and my brother woke up and in the night an owl had hit the train, like
Mm.
an owl had hit it and died and landed on him, and we were joking about, oh man, that's got to be some bad Native American omen
Oh
if a
yeah,
dead owl lands on your
that's
head.
death.
They were looking out the train and saw a bunch of workers, and they were, intently looking at the train. And one of them saw us, and he like pointed to us and gave us the throat slit hand gesture.
Ooh.
And we're like, oh, that's definitely a bad omen. And so we started looking around, and sure enough, once again, we could see the police searching the train up there. And we thought, oh, should we jump off and run for the bushes or see what happens? And we're like, well, let's just see what happens. So we kind of hid under some cardboard boxes and rolled through. And funnily enough, we got past most of them, but the last one, as they do, caught us and pulled us off the train. And they were all disappointed because it was canine training day. And so they had 12 canine units there, and they were all excited that we might run. So I was glad we made the right choice.
Yeah, it sounds like you did.
But anyway, went to jail. It was really just a misdemeanor. It's like a trespassing charge. It wasn't a huge deal, but spent a night there, and yeah, it was definitely memorable. I remember it was a funny little town because they would march you. Again, you're just there for a trespassing charge, but they would march you from the jail to the courthouse, which was several blocks away, but in chains with your hands behind your back, chained to
Oh
your chained up
wow,
legs, march you through town.
you're like Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, totally funny experience, but yeah, so all kinds of little adventures doing that. And every night you're out sleeping and you don't know where you're going to get your meal and who you're going to meet, and so
Yeah, well, what about
always
the other
had you out
riders?
in the world experiencing it,
Yeah.
interacting with different people, and yeah, it was interesting. So
Well, what about the other hobos that you'd be riding with, as with
well,
drugs
I
and mental
typically
health?
rode with with my brother and our other friend, and the three of us would usually rode together, and so that kept it pretty simple. Of course, um, you'd run into other hobos occasionally, but we kind of tried to stick on most, like I said, we have a lot of friends who are hobos or were hobos at the
Mm,
time or whatever. Most of them had issues of different types. And
sure.
so it was a little easier to travel as a sober person, kind of with other sober people, and I only know a couple of them that were hobos. That's my brother
Gotcha.
and my friends. We kind of
Gotcha.
stuck together and didn't. But yeah, we'd always every city you'd get to, it's kind of a small community, so you'd find out that Devo's down in in New York, so we'd end up going and running into him. It's you finding people whenever you were in a certain town, you'd go to the park and reach out and see who was where and
Okay.
go hang out. But
Do they still do the hobo sign thing like they did way back in the
oh yeah,
day?
I mean they're around. They have little. Well, this is all past. I mean, this was all before cell phones. I'm sure it's totally changed now. But there was a genius level hobo guy. I never met him. My brother knew him well. That kept track of every train yard in the country and the where trains would come into, where they would leave, where you could catch them best, where you could get your closest meal, where you could
Uh,
uh, the times trains typically came and which time would go, and when it was leaving the yard
cool.
at what time, where it would likely end up. Anyway, he had it for the whole country. Must have been definitely some kind of a genius, and he'd print that out and give that to the people he really trusted. So that's I
Ah,
still have one of those little pamphlets he made, which is kind of cool. And
no kidding. Whole little underground community.
yeah, exactly.
Well, what got you over to Siberia?
Yeah, so I ended up we lived in Virginia a lot of the time there because we could get work there. And while I was there, long story short, I have another brother who's adopted, and when he became an adult, he found his biological family,
Mm.
and he had a biological brother that was about my age. And so when we all met, that guy was just telling me about how they were going to be building this orphanage in Russia, and he was going to go help some missionary guy over there build it, and I was like, oh, interesting. I hadn't honestly thought a lot about Russia aside from my interest in history and stuff, but I never thought of going there. But I kind of on a whim, or like kind of unseriously almost, just was like, well, Lord, if you want me to go over there and help out, give me a sign or something. And I we headed up to New York and met some Russians and was like oddly blown away. Or, I don't know. I was very heavily moved to I just felt for them very deeply in a way that it all brought tears in my eyes, honestly, which was very strange in my experience. So I just took that as a answer to that prayer unexpectedly, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just buy a ticket for a year and go and see what happens. And so I did that. I ended up there. I was a few months later in Russia, without I didn't have much of a roadmap. I just had a flash of clarity in my life purpose at the time to go. But beyond that, I didn't have much of anything. So I was in a little village in Siberia, and we worked on that little building where they were trying to build the orphanage, and dug well by hand, just doing all that kind of work. And the guy that I lived with was one of the coolest people I know, but he was an American, and I wanted to live with Russians, so I told him, hey man, any Russians I could live with? He called the neighboring village, and that guy, that Russian, was just like, oh man, that'd be amazing. Send the American over. I need to go to work. My wife's in the hospital, and I got these, little kids that need to get watched. So,
there you go.
I was only 21 or 22, but I went over there. I'd never really messed with kids at all, but just dropped me in the deep end of this Siberian village life, watching this guy's kids. We'd cut hay with a scythe and stack it in those piles like you see back in the 20s.
Yeah. Then, like Mother Hen used to do in the old Richard Scarry books.
Absolutely. We'd make, you wouldn't go buy a rake to rake up your hay. You'd make one out of wood.
Cool.
So we had all these handmade tools and then, plant potatoes, milk the cow every day. It was really interesting village life. And that the man I had been there with had been in prison years back, and together with another guy, and that other guy was super funny, covered in Russian prison tattoos, and just a fiery dude. But very Siberian, very northern. He'd always tell me how he had never seen an apple on a tree. He'd never seen just like a man of the north for sure.
Wow.
He would tell me stories about the one time he saw, a minority on the train, and I'd tell me about, I saw a black guy once on the train. Anyway, to him, it was really interesting. I was like, man, grown up in this northern orphanage in Siberia, had a rough life, went to prison a couple times. That's where those two guys met. And then he got out, and he had kind of been a changed man. They'd found God in prison. And so between those two families, I spent my first year there. And then a third guy that had been in prison with was this fur trapper, from the north. And he, really cool guy, he invited me up to live with him and fur trap in the far north. So that kind of led me up that direction. And there I was in northern Siberia with this guy, and he took me out in the woods. He kind of gave me a brief rundown on how to set the traps and how all this works. We went to some of the cabins, and stocked them with noodles. But aside from that, all I really knew of the place was via topographical map. And so it was, that was it. We got it all figured out, got it all set up. It's winter time, about November, or October, November, something like that. And then he went off to a series of cabins in one direction, and I went in another. And we separated for 5 weeks and just opened traps and checked them and lived off the land to supplement our noodles. And it was way in the deep end right away. Honestly, I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned a lot of great lessons fast.
Was it scary, or was it exciting, or
Oh, it was exciting, and it was there's something about when you're alone and you have this thing that you need to do that's kind of out of your league a little bit, that is interesting in that even if it's too much or it's too hard or you don't really know what you're doing, nobody's going to fix that problem except you, because you're alone, and no amount of whining or anything will help. So you really get in this mode where you just make it happen and you make things happen, and I wasn't thinking about, I wasn't scared. I was always hoping to get something, get a grouse or get some fish.
Sure.
There's a bit of pressure on you to produce something. And I spent a lot of days, I'd get turned around and lost and spend lots of extra days just trying to find the next trap in some trap line. Maybe since the last time someone had been there, forest fires had gone through, and, who knows where all these things are. So I fell through the ice in this river at one point, and that's another hard lesson. Obviously now if I'm going across, I'm a little more aware of how water and rivers and ice work. But a lot of the places, it's Siberia, you got feet of ice on the river. You don't really think about it, but of course, there's places where undercurrents are hitting the water and the ice is thin. And
Did you
at
get
that
caught?
time,
Did you get sucked under?
No, I didn't. I just went in with my legs and popped out. But of course, then I was in the middle of Siberia, soaking with. But that was the best case scenario. But I made it out, got back to the cabin and warmed up. My leg was, burning on, as it woke up, it kind of got very cold and died and then came to life.
Yeah. Did you get frostbite on that, or?
No, I don't think so. It was nothing permanent. Yeah, that was the.
Water's scary. Water's
scary, and yeah, there's just margins of error small. I got into quite a few situations that were just tough, and I thought it was good. You're by yourself. I thought it was interesting mentally. Also, that was my first time on it, such an extended period of time, where you realize how much pops into your head when you're alone for a long period of time, and how much unpredictable. Any skeletons in your closet are going to rear their head, or any conversations you should have had that you didn't have are going to come up. And when you're alone, those fester in your head, but you have no way of really settling them because you're just by yourself and there's nobody to talk to about it or anything. So they just roll around in your head. And I thought that was interesting. I was fortunate enough there to have like a pen and paper, so writing helped, right? And then I was like, okay, when I get out of here, I'm going to get a hold of that guy and tell him, make things right and stuff like that.
So as you write these things down, and that's a really cool tip, because that's a huge part of why I want to talk to you is about the mental aspect that you display. And but writing these things down, they probably seem very important in the moment when you're out there and very pertinent. And when you come back into civilization and you look back at this, did it hold the same weight?
Definitely didn't, I would say, because it is, once you get back into civilization, there's just so much more distraction and so much, when you're out there, again, those things will just roll around in your head without really a way to resolve them. And so, or even share the mental burden of them. So it really just occupies a large percentage of your mind when, writing it down helps, just so you can, I'll handle that later and write it down. But
I like that tip.
Once I got out, I did find that on a lot of that stuff I would follow up on, but not on everything, because then once I was out, it didn't affect me as much, but I would say for someone I was advising, like say you were going to get on that alone show or something like that, I would definitely advise you to spend some time ahead of time by yourself long enough to see what types of things might pop up. I mean, maybe it's obvious, maybe what, ends are untied in your life, but there's a good chance that you don't.
Right.
And if you don't, create the space to find out what those are and then resolve them, and then head out on into that experience, with all those ducks in a row as much as they can be, because it'll really eat you up out there if you have serious stuff to work through. It's a terrible place to go work through issues, on some degree. To some degree, it's a great place to recognize what they are, but
hard to Yeah, you
resolved.
can see him. It's like having
Yeah.
an enemy that you just can't punch. You can't
Yeah,
connect, right?
exactly.
Um, so good friend of mine. Actually, he's the one who brought you on my radar. He's like, you got to talk with this guy. He's awesome, right?
All
And
right.
but he
Hey,
was.
tell him hi.
I will, but I'm going to leave his name out here because he was talking about some difficulties that he was having, and I was like, for me, I'll go out into the bush. I'll get away from cells. I'll try and reduce the distractions that I have, and
Mm-hmm.
that's my way of kind of decompressing and bringing things into a bit more of a focal point of what's actually
Mm-hmm.
important. He
Mm-hmm.
says, "Well, I tried that and I was out there for 45 minutes, a couple hours, and I hated it. All these
Mm-hmm.
thoughts are coming in, all these things. It's
Yeah.
like I had to get back into cell service, and I had. So
No,
I said,
interesting.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
said, well, that's because it's masking. When you're with all the people and all the stuff around you, it creates a level of noise that can now kind of mask whatever that underlying thing is. And I suggested maybe find a way to push through, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a question that's sort of related that comes up. It says, I'd love to know more about his thought process and self-talk while he's on the show. He's obviously very skilled and knowledgeable, but what really stood out for me is his calm, almost zen-like energy throughout the whole process. Is this a byproduct of skills and knowledge? Is it a character trait? Or is it a conscious decision he had to make every day to survive?
And to some degree, it's all three. So, like, I won't deny that I have a personality that is a bit. I don't have an anxious personality per se.
You don't have or you do
I
have?
don't. So,
Okay.
like, I will say there is some degree at which it's a one of my natural state of being, but it's definitely a product of environment also because and lessons I've learned in life over the years. So I will say, Alone was interesting because for me, and it probably comes across on the show, although I obviously tried to emphasize it a bit, but for me, it really wasn't hard. It wasn't that hard mentally.
Mm.
And I caught myself out there asking that same question. I was like, why not? Like, I'm thankful that it's not, but I'm also aware that this would usually be a very difficult situation mentally. And so I thought a lot about what had prepared me to do well in that situation. And, I mean, of the half of that, a lot of that is like what I need to write a book on because it's a lot. The answer is very large. There's a lot to it, but I can um, get to some of the points here. The the first one is perspective, I would say. So what allowed me that perspective, and I know I've told this story on Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan and stuff, but it is just being intimately aware of my own of history in general. So like I did a lot of reading when I was young about people and wars and memoirs and stuff, and it gave me as a young person even a perspective on my own trials at the time that just made them not seem so big. And then in my own family history, they'd all been through the Armenian genocide, my grandparents, and both had terrible stories, which I had the benefit of knowing, like I got them passed down to me, but both my grandparents were orphaned and, watched their families killed in this horrible scenario. And, to make a long story short, it was interesting as a young person growing up. I didn't know them because they died before I was alive, but there's a few old grainy videos, and of course I knew all my aunts and uncles that they raised, and the old videos of them, it was like such joyful. They were cooking up a rabbit in France, and there was just so much joy around the table. And then they raised these 11 kids who were my dad, aunts, and uncles that were just it was such a bright part of my childhood were those family reunions and getting together and the laughter and the togetherness. And I always thought it was, and later in my life, it dawned on me how remarkable it was that these people who went through such trials, like that would pale, anything that we're going through in comparison. Uh, and they came through with joy that was deep that they transferred to their children, that they, like, I didn't grow up with a bunch of ingrained animosity for the people that did this to us or anything like that. They built a new life. They fostered family to a very high degree, and then I came along just one generation later, the beneficiary of their ability to go through that suffering and coming out with a positive, and come out as creators, not as victims or whatever. And I thought that was, I think about that a lot. That's something that goes with me when I'm on a TV show on Alone. It's like, what can I whine about out here? And hopefully
That's
I
a
can
good
live
point.
up to their legacy in the same way. Well, I'll keep it short too, but my
Oh, don't
dad
worry
went,
about it.
oh yeah, well, my dad went through a similarly difficult, final 10 years to his life where he lost his legs, he had diabetes. He grew up as a child with diabetes. He had polio. So he was physically unable to maintain his health the way he would want. And then, but he being, the product of his parents and who he was, an immigrant to the U.S., all he wanted to do was create a life for his kids and, just be a family man and provide, and which he did a great job of until he was about 50, and he got a sore on his foot that wouldn't heal, as it happens. And then he spent 4 or 5 years just trying to get this sore to heal. He couldn't walk on it, so he lost his job, and then it finally healed, and we went out. We were splitting firewood, I remember, and we had the log splitter, and he was just like, man, Jordan, it's just so nice to be outside again and be out, and he crushed his foot in the log splitter.
Oh,
So then they just amputated his leg, but, once that happens, your health can really degrade. And they
and
eventually had to
mentally too.
together. And in the meantime, my mom had to go back to work. She was a stay-at-home mom, but somebody needed to provide, and so she was going back to school to become a nurse, and dad had to watch as he felt like a failure, and mom had to pick up the slack. And we were, I remember him crying when we had to go to the food bank and all that, and he just felt like a major failure. But it was interesting because I got to watch his growth through the years. And then for us, he never felt like a failure. Never seemed like a failure. We saw how
Totally.
he dealt with it. And for us, from my perspective, I was constantly, I was watching how he was dealing with the suffering and the bad lot he kind of had in life. And what I saw is him evolve from, obviously there were very hard times early on, especially, but then he worked through and he found that his self-worth wasn't tied up necessarily in what he could do and what he could produce and all the things that you and I probably tie self-worth up in. But he could see that what I could see was that his value to me was in, like, he was such an encourager, and he was such an example of how to face loss and trial but maintain a joyful spirit. Every morning I'd hear him at night in pain, like rolling around and like, then the morning I'd get up and, hey, Jordan, just be really happy and want to talk and want to read. Anyway, very positive all the way until he died. And it was an interesting, another very valuable lesson in how to face trials, and that always stuck with me. Those two lesson, three, I guess, the reading I had done of like Gulag Archipelago and stuff, my family history, and my dad gave me a trifecta of perspective through which to filter my own experience that just allowed me to deal with suffering with a little more, I think, more of a level head and a little less focus on my own personal experience, being able to couch it into a broader, a
Yeah.
broader story. And then, so that would be one. That would be like one leg of the of the
Okay. Yeah.
of the stool of resilience. Then I guess you would need, another part of it. Let me think. I gotta organize my own thoughts here. But well, I guess another obvious one that kind of is just having solid relationships in your life. So because again, it was something you made very clear when you're on a loan or something like that. All my trips to Russia, I spent most of my 20s in Russia, but of course I was a young dude. I had wanted to pursue relationships with this girl or that girl, or I had friends I wanted to spend time with, or this and that. And but I also had my core people who my family, my really close friends. And it was interesting to find that after I would leave to Russia and be gone for a year, I could come back and boy, those people were still there, we still cared about each other. And now my being gone could bring something back and add value to their lives too. And being able to by practicing that muscle, exercising that muscle, I was able to grow in my ability to trust those relationships to maintain through even time and distance and stuff like that. And realize that what I would go through would add value to them and vice versa. And we can all, we don't have to stick to, be
I
necessarily
love that.
physically close like that. Our love in some way would bind us together. And I could trust that. And because I had strong relationships, particularly like on a loan, my marriage was good. So I didn't have to be out there and stress about that. And so, so that's good. Then I think there's like a little bit more practical aspects of it, which is that throughout my life, I had just often been outside of my comfort zone. We touched on it a little bit already, but from riding freight trains to living in a foreign country, not knowing the language, to learning the language, and then being in a completely varied foreign cultures and having to adapt and,
Yeah.
and often just over my head, but recognizing, that I could be comfortable living on kind of what I would call the edge of my aptitude. Like I was always pushing what I was comfortable doing, and always, not even consciously sometimes, but just I would find myself in situations where, God, gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, but figure it out. Obviously, in doing so, you also become really familiar with failure, and it does because you're constantly screwing up and iterating and learning and in doing so, I just think by being on the edge of your abilities a lot, failing a lot, you become more resilient so that when you do get in those uncomfortable situations, you don't feel flustered. You're kind of like, oh, you know
Totally.
what it's like. You're totally kind of used to it. And then I always think of the example when I missed the moose on Alone, because later and I'm on this show and I set up for the listeners that don't know, I set up this big opportunity of weeks of calling and strategizing to create some opportunity out of moose. And I got one and I missed. And
Yeah.
and I remember the thing walking away and just for one, I was like, well, that was awesome. Like, what a dinosaur. And like, darn it, I cannot believe I missed both those
Big
emotions
bull.
combined. But then at the same time, I could not I could be unflustered in that moment. And instead of being mad about how I screwed up and my failure, I could immediately just switch into, oh, there goes the moose. Like, how can I learn from, what its behavior is to make this happen again? Because it just made me more determined to create another interaction. And right after I missed it, I was able to just stay focused, watch it, keep a level head, follow where it went, and come up with another plan, without being despondent over over.
Well, what do they
And so
say?
I think
There's
what's that?
winners, and there's learners, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think just having a lifetime of experience that had me outside of my comfort zone and kind of screwing up and being uncomfortable, being okay with that, helped build some of that resilience that your buddy was asking about. And I, so yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting for him to go out. I think people need to. I don't think not creating that mental space because it's too hard is an option. Like I think you almost have to. You almost have to go through it. I would recommend you go out, and if there's things really nagging him, write it down. Make sure that you're gonna, like, when you come out, try to be determined to follow up on what those things are. But then write them down and do your best to let them slide, because well I will work through this issue, but I can't up here right now because, so
Right.
I would try to practice that muscle of recognizing what you can and what you can't affect and not being too bothered by what you can't affect. But putting in its right place, and when you can, then you need to act on that. So I think in his situation, writing it down would be helpful. And then, spend more time up there because it is important to have those resets. We are so unusually distracted these days that I don't think just maintaining that way of life is ideal. And it's not. It's the norm. Like we're all like that. You and I both are constantly bombarded by information and phones and this and that, and that's okay. But you'd have to create some space that's not that. That's not scheduled and that's not pressured and that's not distracted. And so I think your advice was right to push through it. Maybe it'd be helpful to write it down and be determined to see what pops up and to come out of the woods and confront what those things are.
I think that's a brilliant addition to the advice that I gave him there. And the points that you bring up, I really like the fail fast, fail hard, fail often, because then you learn that failure is not fatal. Success isn't final, failure isn't fatal, and you get used to that. And I know people who crave failure. They're high performers, high achievers, because then they know this is a stepping stone to success. I know if I'm failing, I'm pushing myself and I'm learning. So
right.
And the other one that, if I'm picking up what you're saying there, is a third-party perspective. And what I mean by that is, I'll give a couple examples. One, when my wife was in labor with our first child, our daughter, and it was 27 hours of labor and long
That's
time.
An intense experience.
Totally, and lots of pain and everything else. And she's like, I don't know if I can do this, and blah, blah, blah. You know, the thoughts that go through somebody's head, right?
Yeah.
And doing the natural birth thing. And I said, well, how would future you like to look back on you and how you perform now? How would your grandmother have dealt with something like this? Because she admires her grandmother very much, right? And,
right.
How do you want to look back on how you dealt with this in the moment today? And although some people have said that I'm lucky I didn't get my head smacked off at that point, in the moment, in the time, that was the right advice for her. And it was like a light bulb just flicked. And all of a sudden, it was like all new energy, all new perspective. It was the same situation, but she's like, okay, it's one day of my life, right? Or it's 1 month of my life, or it's 1 year of my life. How do I want to look back on this one?
Right.
And the other one is that I kind of got there. Another fellow, I haven't heard from him in years, and super funny guy. Had a problem with alcohol and went in the program, and I got this text a couple weeks ago, and saying, I don't know why I am the way I am, and my addiction has taken me, and getting into it. And I see just through statement analysis and looking at how like, what do you mean my addiction? I have an addictive personality, but it's not my addiction. I don't have to own this thing. But so I'm talking with them, and I said, there's people that care about you. There's people who want you around. And he's like, well, like who? My family, they can take care of myself. My daughter, she's off to university. She can take care of herself. And I said, well, you don't think mental health and addiction is not a hereditary thing? You don't think at some point she might want to be able to look back? She might be fine right now.
Oh, yeah.
But when she does experience difficulties, what example are you giving her as a role model to be able to deal with these difficulties if you call it quits?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you take the easy way out. And that's that perspective that your father was able to give you. He was going through a difficult time, but he approached it with such enthusiasm and humility and humor.
Yeah, you can find purpose in that trial, and that his purpose could be to like, well, I'm going to confront this addiction and this depression and like maybe show my daughter how to, should she ever find herself in the same position, like.
Right. He says, oh, I want to be strong like you, or I want to be this like somebody else. I said, well, you don't say I want to have strong muscles and then never go to the gym. You need to present yourself with those weights and challenges in order to develop the muscles you want to. And the same thing is in life. The same ability to be strong mentally and emotionally happens because of these challenges that were presented. And this is what I mentioned to him. I said, you're given an awesome opportunity right now. You're given something a lot of people don't get the challenge to do. And how
Mhm.
you deal with it now is going to frame how you are in the future. And the people who love you and look up to you
Could
are
ripple for generations. Who knows? You know what I mean? Yeah.
like yours,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's crazy. Yeah. Crazy to
Yeah.
think.
So, okay. So you're on a loan. You're allowed, I think, 10 items. Is it
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
items? Um, what what did you bring that you thought was the most important, and what would you probably not bring again?
Uh, it's hard to say what's the most important because you definitely. But if you're going to be out there long term, I don't know. The natives I was with, in Siberia would always say the one thing you need to survive is an axe, and
Mm,
that's somewhat true, I'd say, because with an axe, I felt like if I had an axe, I could have a chance. It's a
mm,
very small chance, but you could.
yeah.
That my plan A on that show was actually I wanted to barrel. The natives had showed me this cool deadfall for a bear, and I thought, oh, that'd be sweet.
Ah.
And that's something I could build with just an axe and build a deadfall and then smash a bear. I thought that'd be sweet, but
Oh wow.
we weren't allowed to bait traps, so that would have.
Right. Right. Yeah. Some
But
provinces you
that
can,
said,
but
having that axe does give you the ability to procure food, to build shelter, to find, water in the winter, or whatever. It gives
mm,
you a lot of options, so you can build fire with it. Um, the one item that I almost felt like I didn't need was the saw. I took it because I thought it'd be a calorie saver and be nice. It was very helpful, in building, but you can do everything with an axe that you can do with a saw, basically,
mm,
particularly in softwood forests. But the I felt like it was a little superfluous. Had I known my location, what it would be ahead of time, I would have swapped it for a gill net. But
mm.
uh, I made a gill net, but
Right.
I could have then had two, which would only just been better. So in hindsight, that's what I'd have done. But the axe was, the saw was still handy and stuff, but
Uh huh.
it was a little bit unnecessary. So I would have been my item swap had I had hindsight.
Yeah.
Everything else was very useful that I took. So I wouldn't. hmm And I
You know.
kind of like that show format because having a few items versus just not having anything, you picture like naked and afraid or something. It's just not a realistic way to survive in the woods. I say it's like 0% chance basically, unless
Yeah.
maybe you're eating coconuts or whatever. But the to have a legitimate way of making of wilderness living and not just dying slowly, there's you need a few items, and so I think that alone kind of hit on that balance pretty well, which mimicked a bit what I had been doing in Siberia and stuff, so it was kind of perfect for that situation.
I guess, yeah. Well, Nikki, she made it to day 52 before she was medically extracted, medically
Yeah,
ITU'd.
yeah,
And she says she was in shock because she felt like she was in the best shape of her life. And like
yeah.
things are going great. Like, what do you mean you're pulling me off? I put all this time and energy
Oh
into this.
no,
Um,
that's terrible.
but she was talking about the medical checks that get done. Were there any
Yeah.
points where your medical checks were looking a little touch and go?
No, like so I actually left the show weighing what I do now, just my totally normal weight.
Awesome.
But I'll tell you what, I'm a thin dude, and I was worried that they might be worried that I was thin because
Mm,
uh, it's kind of a long story, but um, I thought basically that they thought I was. I thought they thought I was too thin, and so I was
mm.
super stressed about them. And I also, uh, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know if the show was rigged or
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
wanted somebody to win and this and that. And so I was
yeah,
like, man, what if they try to use that as an excuse to pull me off, even just because I'm skinny,
yeah.
but I'm this way normally. So anyway, those were all thoughts I had. I got to admit, but I was never in any danger. Honestly, when the show ended, like I said, I weighed what I do now. I might have even been slight. I was 168 when I weighed myself, and that's like right what I usually am.
Mm.
So interestingly enough. But I had lost 25 pounds because I just put on a bunch of blubber before I went out,
Smart
eating
move.
olive oil and all that. Uh, so that's why I thought, man, I lost that 25 pounds. They might be worried about me, but they shouldn't be. And so I was always stressed when they came on med checks, but only for that reason. And then I guess, yeah, was that the question? Sorry, I lost track of the
Yeah.
question.
Well,
Yeah. Anyway, I empathize for her being pulled, feeling like she was in good health because I was stressed they would do that to me. This is me. And I didn't have any. I didn't know how I could prove I wasn't. I remember telling him like, "What you guys want me to do? Jumping jacks or
right.
push-ups or like what do I want to? I'm totally fine. I swear I'm just skinny."
Well, I believe it was what, 500,000 that you end up winning, and
Right.
if I remember reading that you said your goal was to do the show so that you can spend more time with your family. You're in a financial
Yeah.
place, so you can spend more time with your kids to help raise them right.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. Been good. It's been amazing for that. It's been a huge blessing. Honestly, the most tangible positive from the show. I have met a lot of really cool people, but it has allowed me to shift a bit from construction and the trades and stuff like that, and into taking people out in the wilderness, and that's more of a seasonal job, and so then I also have a downtime where I can really focus on spending time with the family. I have the infrastructure and the live in the right place to be able to take the kids out in the mountains too and enjoy that with them and really help. It really helped me kind of, for one, it was one of the many experiences of life that helped me give me great clarity on what my priorities are in life, but it was a very important one in being able to like kind of bring that to a place that, man, I can only be thankful for where I'm at right now. And sometimes yeah, and you don't deserve it, but we got a good thing going. Hallelujah. What can I say?
don't deserve it. I don't know about that. I
Well,
don't know.
it's funny because I always have the background. I always have it running in the background that it doesn't have to be this way. Like look at my grandparents. They were as wonderful of people, I'm sure, and doing their best in it, and their life was very difficult. And so all I can do is like focus on when that's not the case and in what aspects that's not the case and be really thankful for it. So I'm honestly like consciously aware of, I don't take for granted the fact that I do have my health right now, that I can go up there. I can understand there's a lot of people that can't. I don't take for granted the fact that I have a job that I love. It's like that's not given to everybody. And none of that stuff comes, none of it is, but that's why I say I don't think it's necessarily deserved, because it's just, there is a element to which it's not. But of course, hard work
Okay.
and stuff maximizes your odds. But it's just I'm thankful for it. All I can do is just be thankful.
Yeah, isn't it funny? The harder that we work, the luckier we get.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
funny.
You play a role in making your own luck for sure.
You
Yeah.
know, when I prepare for a podcast like this, I'll go through and I'll try and find background on an individual, but I have sort of a rough outline because I really like to see where the conversation takes us.
Uh
And
huh. Uh
so I've got ADHD and I can go in a whole bunch of different directions, but I also kind of pick up on little weird things as we go through too. And
huh.
I'm just kind of vocalizing my process at the moment because if I'm to play an armchair detective and do statement analysis off of a few things that you were saying when we first started talking, there
Yeah.
was a thread of two themes that you brought up on more than one occasion, and
All right.
one was sobriety and one was faith.
Oh yeah.
So what what's that about? Am I on base
Oh
for
yeah,
thinking?
maybe it's fun. Well, yeah, I guess sobriety. Personally, I don't have an addictive personality and haven't struggled it. Like my dad wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't have that struggle running in the background. But in my adult life, it's been a huge part of my experience, given the fact that particularly with my traveling friends, and
Mm,
then on another note, in Russia, in particularly amongst the native populations over there, it's just through the roof, and it's people you really care about and love, and you can see them in the woods, as when they're nomadic and they're out in the forest. They're people you would meet and think of as like happy people. But when they get in the village, or all their relatives who aren't reindeer herders that live in the village, it's just it's terrible. The amount of the death by murder, suicide, or accident is 30% amongst those people. They're like, it's a mind blowing, and it's like a lot of our friends. Every time I call back, I'm a little bit nervous about who's going to be alive and what's going to have happened. So there was a lot of stark, not only tragedies but also just missed opportunities, and there's a lot of that I've been involved with over my life. So I guess maybe that's why that pops into mind. And faith has just been it's just an awesome, it's just a interesting thing. It's a huge part of my life, but I'm fascinated by how it evolves over the course of a person's life. You get a certain set of principles and beliefs passed down to you from your parents, and then those have to become your own through the course of trial and tribulation and all that, and then you end up on this journey, and I so yeah, it's something I'm always interested to talk about, with the understanding that I am just a person on a journey, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, are you a religious fellow? Is your family
I
religious?
grew up in a Christian home. That's why even my whole family history is that they weren't actually Armenians. They were what's called Assyrians. It's a Christian minority group. They're the last people that speak Aramaic, that was
cool.
what Jesus spoke. So they were the indigenous people to the Middle East before kind of the Arab influx. And there still exists. There's still some of them, very few left now because of the generations of violence and all that. So, but yeah, so my family history is Christian, and then I grew up a Christian, and then but I remember, your faith gets tied to a lot of random things when you're, a lot of things when you're young. I think for me, when I was around the time when I felt that odd flash of purpose and went to Russia, there was I felt like that was kind of a dark time, because I remember I'd always put my faith on a bit of a pedestal. I always took it seriously, but I also found that I was in a very dark place, and if I would pray, it just felt like nothing. If I didn't have any, it just felt very dark. And I remember I was like, of course, maybe my faith had been tied up with too much of what I had a hard time believing, like the Earth 6,000.
Sure.
And so you got to untie all that stuff and figure out where the wheat is, where the chaff is. And I think right early in the process, as a 20-year-old, I just felt like I was in a dark place. But I remember reading this verse that said, "For those of you who are," "For those of you who are righteous and yet in the darkness, just continue." It was basically that was the summary of it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting at the time, because there are people who try to follow the path of righteousness but are in the darkness, and I guess I'll just continue and see what happens. And I kind of, after that conscious decision to continue and to act and live out the faith even if I didn't feel it, I was when I got that little call to go to Russia, and then, which I was really profound for me at the time. And I remember, so there, and I was heading on this Trans-Siberian Railway out to this Siberian village, and I was like, I don't even have faith. I'm just doing this. I got a little spurt of something, but I don't have. And I just remember on the Trans-Siberian Railway, I just Lord, if I had just one thing I could ask for, just someday give me faith. I'm going to live like I believe, because I'm going to guide my life. I kept it really simple. I didn't care. I was the ultimate summary of my faith was, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's like, if I can just keep it that, I don't have to worry about the earth age at my age. I don't have to figure out all.
So you're basically faking it till you make it? Is that what?
Exactly. So I'm just gonna worry about what the meat and bones of the meat is of this. And I prayed that prayer going to Russia, and it was funny because on the way out, I after that first year, and it was a really conscious year of me trying to act purposefully out of love, and go visit the old lady in her house, and go dig that well, or do it, just hands on. And on the way back on the train, I had forgotten about that prayer, but I remembered it on my train ride back, and I thought, oh my gosh, that prayer really answered? Like, unbelievable. And it was like, it kind of blew me away. I was like, oh, I actually do have faith now. I don't know how that happened over the course of the last year, but and then over my whole life, it's just evolved and changed. But it's a journey I am definitely on, and I appreciate. Like, I really like the idea of, we all have these things based on everyone's background, but things that we struggle with, but rather than destroy and tear it all down, I think we need to redeem and take this brick down, that brick down, repair it with this one and that one, rather than bulldozing the whole thing. And so I feel like a bit that's my, my path of faith also is a bit like that. And I most relate to it in the idea of the struggle, there's that idea that the word Israel means to struggle with God or whatever, to wrestle with God. And that's funny because if you can throw it all out, and I totally understand people that do that for whatever reason, this is all BS, and throw it out. And I have a lot of people that I love that have done that. But if you take it seriously and wrestle with it, and wait, what if I try to take seriously love your enemies? What does that mean? And that's a challenge, and in some ways it's actually impossible. The call in general to love others is impossible, and when you live out with these people and you invest so much in them, and then they drink too much and die, and this, it gets you, it really grinds on you at the vanity of it all. But to have that, to choose to believe and have that orientation in the world, I think is I think I find it so valuable in my life. I'm a huge champion of that, even though I understand why. There's a lot of people whose faith is tied up with just an unnecessary sense of guilt all the time, or a this or that. So I understand the complexities of it, but if I can boil it down to what is good and what is it that we all agree with on some deep level, this the pedestal that our culture has put the idea of love on is not for nothing. It didn't come out of nowhere. That's not it's not a survival ethic. It's not as far as it's not survival of the fittest. It's something a little bit different than that. And so I want to cherish that. And there's that baby in the bathwater that was my faith, and there's a baby in the bathwater that I think in that Christian message that I ascribe to that I think is really worth fleshing out. And that's kind of my life journey of faith, is fleshing that out, I guess. Yeah.
Well, that provides purpose, and that purpose provides meaning, and joy comes from all of that. And
yeah, absolutely. And then you do it in community with others who are trying to take that path seriously. You know what I mean? And then so I think that's really neat. I think it's neat to be on a purposeful journey towards a ideal, towards a goal like that with others, and work that out in your life. And
yeah, progressive realization of a worthy ideal, as Earl Nightingale would say, right? Yeah. Okay, so you said it's almost impossible. I think you said almost. I think you had that almost qualifier in there to love thy enemy, to forgive those who have wronged you. Have you squared yourself with that, or is that because I find that one I can't wrap my head around how do you love someone who's done so much wrong and continues to actively go out of their way to try and And like
Yeah, no, I do think that that's where the struggle comes in. But I'll tell you what is easy to do. It's easy to hate them. You know what
mm,
I mean? And so I think it's incredibly valuable to have to have that to push back against your natural tendencies. Because there's no doubt in history and your own life personally, it's like this. You're always looking out for your best interests, you know.
sure.
I just think having
Yeah.
that to push against that. That's why I don't take it particularly dogmatically. It's
Mm,
not like a law that you must fulfill. It's a call towards wrestling with this as being your goal and your ideal.
it's a
And
good point.
honestly, you're going to fall short. And I guess that's another interesting thing about that Christian message in particular is that it's like there's kind of like, oh well, there's grace for that, but just take it seriously
Mm.
and try, in a way. And I think it just makes you uh, yeah, I think we take for granted how important it is that there are so many of us in our culture that have that. Even if we don't, or even if we're not even conscious of where it came from, we have that operating system running in the background. Like just even you think of like the message of Jesus to have to love the weak and blessed are the poor and this and that. That wasn't the norm,
Mm.
as the Roman historians wrote, like the strong do what they will and the weak suffer what they must, and that was the way the world always was until, oddly enough, this other worldview came into the world and somehow gained enough traction that now its tenets just run in the background of our consciousness, even though we don't even some may or may not subscribe to where they came from. But I feel like it's one of those things that if we're not grateful for it, we could lose it, because
Mm.
I don't think it's a given in the world, in world history. It's an anomaly of, either consider it supernatural or an anomaly of history. It's amazing that it happened, like, because it's not a given, and so we should
Well,
respect that.
I think it's a universal truth. And I think if you look at all these different religions, they all
Hmm.
will have their points that can tend to boil down to these, and I'm going to do air brackets, sort of universal truths
Right.
or an operating system for how things kind of should proceed. And people will call it by different names and they'll have different ways to try and go there. But it's hidden insofar as it goes against human survival nature of I'm in
Hmm.
it for me. I got to make sure me and mine are taken care of.
Hmm.
Like I mentioned this to a friend of mine. She was over and her daughter was there. And I says, at their core, everybody's in
Uh-huh.
it for themselves. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's just some people that line is really close to their day to day, and some people it's pushed further. And she's like, I don't believe that. I said, okay. So someone throws a match in this house right now and it's burning down, and I didn't even have to finish my statement. She says, "Oh, I'm grabbing Adelaide first." Her daughter, right? Well, that's how we're designed. We're designed intuitively
Right.
to protect ourselves and those that we love. So that
And we're designed, yeah, we are, but we're also really designed intuitively to be tribal. To be
yes,
like that's like a deep part of who we are, to like
yeah,
our in group, out group. And it's interesting to have something else going on in your ethical framework that pushes you beyond that. Says, no, my boundary of who is the other and who is on my side isn't just who's in my family or who's in my group or even who's in my faith tribe or who's in my country. It kind of pushes that beyond where it naturally sits. And
mm,
that's not to say that I mean, obviously, again, it kind of goes back to loving your enemy. Well, the fact is you're still going to prefer your family, and it's kind of impossible to love your enemy
mm,
when it's truly, when they're truly, when there's truly evil and violence and all that.
right.
But the like operating system that has that to counter our natural selves is incredibly valuable, I think, and I think it's taken for granted. I don't think. Well, I would push back maybe against what you're saying is I don't actually think it's necessarily a universal thing because it really wasn't even. it's not even really the case historically. Again, if I just point back to simplistically, the Roman like ethic was much different. It was like you could, if you had power over that person because they were not a Roman citizen or a slave, you could do whatever you wanted with them, and that was the way of the world forever, honestly, until Britain decided to try to end slavery. That was the most normal thing in the world. It was
Right.
because we're stronger and it's our team and whatever. But there was something in the world that decided that, and that honestly, it was if I would, in my context, obviously, there's a lot of, in my context, like as far as I'm in the West here, but it was a Christian ethic that pushed back against what was a pretty normal us versus them state of being in the world. And I just think that that's interesting, and we should at least recognize it before we throw it all out.
Yeah. Do you know who Roger Bannister is?
No, should I?
I don't know. Maybe. You're
Explain.
kind of like Roger Bannister in a way.
Oh, interesting.
So,
In case my phone dies, I'm gonna try to go get a charger before it does. But
okay, yeah.
I'm heading there.
To tell you what,
who's Roger Bannister?
So Roger Bannister, back in 1954, he ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Prior to 1954, they thought that was impossible. No man can run a mile in under 4 minutes. A month and a half later, John Landy goes out there and he runs a mile in under 4 minutes. And the next year, there's 3 more people go out and run a mile under 4 minutes. A year after that, 10 more people. And now thousands do it, and high school students will go out and run a mile under 4 minutes. But what changed was the people's perception of what is actually possible. So if you look at Alone Season 6, there were 6 seasons of Alone where their contestants competed, and nobody had gotten any big game. You were the first person to go out there, and you got a moose. Unsuccessful first time, successful second time, you got a moose, lots of meat. Next season, somebody got a big game. Season after that, someone got big game. And it's happened a number of times afterwards. But through your example, it's sort of become the norm that people can expect certain things out of themselves. And in the way that you're talking about living your life and through your example and what you're doing with your kids and how you've learned from others and what you're doing through social media, you are showing other people a path of resiliency in the outdoors and in life. I would say that is akin to how Roger Bannister showed people, hey, this is actually possible.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great compliment. I would hope that.
Well,
I hope that would be the case to some degree. That would be good. But.
Well, I think the takeaway for me is that when you put your head towards something, really just because it's never been done before doesn't mean it can't be done. And
right. Well, that was No, go ahead.
Yeah, and how am I comporting myself today in the moment? That's going to serve as an example for myself, my family, for others at a later date. And that's some of the message that I'm hearing when you're talking.
Good. That's I like how you put that. But yeah, it's kind of a great thing to have running in the background of your mind. Just like what are you putting into the world, and is that what you want to be putting into the world? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything, I mean, man, there's a whole ton more we can talk about, but I realize you have a battery issue that might be concerning.
I got plugged in, so I probably have more time, yeah.
Okay.
It's out charging now I'm ahead of the game. All right.
Beautiful. And, I was going to drive down to your location there and we're going to do this in person, but I was juggling my other commitments and what we have to do. And I'm like, I either put this off for a long time or we at least get the introduction and get the ball rolling and have this conversation here and maybe are able to continue the conversation out in your neck of the woods or my neck of the woods.
Absolutely. The connection has been made.
The connection is made.
Yeah.
You ever make your way out to BC?
Not often. I don't find myself in BC often, though. What an awesome place. Yeah, I mean, it's
Mm.
not for lack of appreciating it.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting place. Tons of biodiversity, awesome for hunting,
Oh
beautiful,
yeah,
rugged wilderness.
boy, you fly over those mountains.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
man, you spend a lot of time up there in DC running around. I'm sure.
I have so many other questions that I've looked through here:
Well,
minimalism and gear philosophy, being present, finding meaning, faith, fear, and the unknown. Talking about more about the reindeer herders, but I think the biggest one that I had a mark behind here was the psychology of isolation,
hmm
and I, you touched on a lot of the points that I was hoping to uncover through the conversation.
uh-huh.
Uh, there's a couple things here. Like, was there anything that you discovered in the isolation that you're still processing?
Um, no, not particularly on alone. Again, that was interesting. I did find that I know that alone's been it's a life changing experience for a lot of people. For me, it felt very similar to Russia, and so
Mm.
it kind of felt. So a lot of times when I'm looking for the things that I want to or had to work through. I think most of that work was done in those 10 years that I was going back and forth to Russia, as opposed to once by the time I got on alone, a lot of those lessons I'd actually already learned, which was such a big advantage out there, and so.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, what I'm working through is really it's applying some of the lessons that I already now know. And I think
Mm.
it would mostly be in relation to if I try to think about where maybe it's hard to say, but where I'm kind of falling short of what I know I would think about if I was alone,
Sure.
having been there a bunch.
Sure.
It is, for example, I know every time that since I've had kids, that I spend a long time out in the woods. I think, when I get back, I'm gonna like make a point to take the kids out on dates. Each of them I should
Mm.
take out once a week, once a month or whatever it is, and just
Yeah.
be consistent about giving them some personal time like that. And though I've had clarity on my priorities enough to know to set up my life in such a way that I have a good amount of time with my family and kids, I have continued to fail at doing the
Yeah.
dates, the planned setups like that. So that's something.
Yeah, that could be tough. It can be tough to have this event that you're planning towards and doing, but
Yeah.
to be able to recognize in the moment when it's actually happening, I think is a very powerful tool as well.
Yeah, being president, that's a struggle, right? Isn't it now?
Mm.
Like, even, we can often be distracted amongst our loved ones and not
Right?
give them the attention we want or they deserve.
Well, what is the notoriety that you've received after being on Alone? You're mentioning you're on Lex Friedman, you're on Joe Rogan, like that. Those aren't insignificant podcasts. You've had a lot of eyes on you,
Uh-huh.
um, and you've got a level of fame or infamy
hmm
from what you've done. How's that been like to deal with?
Well, it's honestly, I sometimes joke with some of my buddies, but it's at a, it's not too crazy. It was interesting hanging out with Joe Rogan because he is at a level of fame that really alters your life. Like
Mm,
it's difficult. He had to, that was still when he was in LA, but you had to go to this unmarked building, and he has all these bodyguard type guys around, and it's just and if he's the minute he steps out of his building and walks down the street,
mm,
it's his experience of life is going to be greatly altered by his fame.
mm-hmm.
Mine is actually not like, believe it or not. But what it is it's kind of funny because, for one, it's kind of a fun thing to get known for. It was a fun show, a good show, and so the people that are interested in that, it usually just leads to a random conversation that's a fun conversation with some stranger that's probably a pretty cool person. It's like, oh, that provides those opportunities here and there to just have a random fun conversation while you're out. And honestly, it's kind of a great level of if you call it fame or whatever, but it's
Yeah,
leads to some fun conversations, a lot of really cool connections, but it's not life altering in the way that a certain level of fame would be.
I
Uh,
guess.
mhm.
Did you
And so
get people reaching out and hating on you because you killed an animal
a
on
lot
TV?
less than I expected. I'll be honest. I thought that was going to be. I was like, oh, that's going to be funny getting known for, especially axing this Wolverine that I don't know if
Right.
most people probably think they're endangered. I just, I was like,
Oh.
oh man, I was expecting more hate than I got. And initially, when it first came out, I remember there were a few, but it's been surprisingly little. And maybe there's, the people get all fired up on the internet, but if you're thoughtful about something, and I genuinely am thoughtful about my, ethics and hunting and things like that, I think there's more room for that than we think. It's not just like dude that shoots everything that moves against like hardcore vegan, and it's like
Right,
so
right.
there's a whole world of people out there that are open to reason, even if they disagree potentially with somebody might choose a path of vegetarianism, even though they hear my best reasoning as to why I feel like ethical hunting is a thing, but
Sure.
but uh, uh, but I don't think there's as much antagonism there as you get the impression sometimes, which has been my experience. Like I said, I expected to have more hate, I guess you'd say, and I just didn't get that much. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's positive overall, like pretty positive. And I had to learn a little bit early on because you'll get an occasional loud idiot saying something, and then it's
Mm.
fine. As it does, it just grates in your mind. Like, why did that? You have to learn to ignore that, and so that was just a bit of a learning process. But I haven't had. I mean, it's not a ton. It's not like yeah,
I
not as
think,
much as I thought.
yeah, my experience has been interesting. I think, a lot of urban type people
Hmm.
are actually intrigued about the idea of self sufficiency and being
Hmm.
able to forage and get their own food and hunting and the idea behind it. And I think it's a very different sort of mentality now. Maybe it's a post COVID thing. Like
Yeah.
I was invited out for a dinner, friend of mine, and she says, "Oh, come on over. We got some other friends, and a couple are getting into hunting. One of them's transgendered, works for Greenpeace." I'm like, "Hold on a second. This person's getting into hunting? Like, well, I thought there's a stereotype to working for Greenpeace, and they're getting into hunting, right?" And so it was really it's been really eye opening for me seeing the level of interest that people have for shows like Alone. The
Hmm.
I think there's a connection to our natural environment that people intuitively know is missing from their lives, and
Yeah, yeah, you're right on that. Yeah.
they're looking for ways to be able to fill that. And for me, I see hunting as one of the ultimate ways to fulfill it because pulling the trigger on an animal, if you're successful enough to find one and get on target or using a bow or whatever it
Hmm.
might be, is that fraction of a second. But
Hmm.
the time that you spend scouting, the time you spend reading and learning, the time you spend just being present in the woods and listening to the critters chirp and the birds and the patterns and the cycles of the day, all of that encompasses a much deeper connection that I
Yeah,
think.
and I think when you see someone that's really anti, and that's why I can't get that mad because I just recognize that they're usually not actually aware of what they're arguing with. Like
Right.
because most people like yourself, like you're articulating, when you're out in the woods, there's like a deep sense of understanding of the interdependence of us with nature and with the whole system. And you see, this herd of elk. It's not like you're just like, oh, I want to kill. It's like you actually want like you
You want
deeply
one?
you deeply respect and like appreciate those animals, but
Mm,
at the same time you are going to harvest one, you're going to shoot
right.
one, kill one, and eat it. But it's
Yep.
like but it's a uh but at the same time you're going to like work towards creating, the best situation where that species, those animals can thrive. Like we, as the kind of North American conservation model has done a pretty good job of doing, which is something that I'm pretty impressed by, having lived overseas where, people usually just shoot what they see because
Sure.
for a myriad of reasons, from not having the same wealth that we do, to just not having the same societal trust levels that we have the luxury of living in, and all that kind of stuff. But ours conservation model, it's amazing. I'm always like, that's so cool. We live right near town and there's deer all over the place and you can see elk and people aren't just shooting them all the time. It's that's great. And we want that to continue, but we do have to recognize that there's no, where I think people get it wrong is people think that we can exist and we can separate ourselves from nature and the wild can exist over there and we can exist over here, but we're
part of it.
And you see it when you live close, like I do, to wild places. It's like, even if you wanted humans to not affect nature, they do. And even if you personally are going to try not to eat a particular type of animals are being killed in the process of making your food, in the process of shipping it here and there and refrigerating. There's like habitat loss involved. There's just a lot of factors. Where we live pushes the animals into less ideal wintering grounds, and where accidentally introduced invasive species. And it's just like, these are very complicated situations. So rather than acting like we cannot be a part of them, we need to recognize that we are and do it thoughtfully and well.
Well said.
Yeah. So
well said.
And I think people are, in general, open to that message when they have an open mind at all and are discussing it. But and a lot of times I don't think people even there's just a lot of that people haven't thought about. When you don't live in a world that is connected to nature, because it's easy in an urban environment to
totally
feel like we're not dependent on wild places and such.
Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should be talking about?
Oh boy, that was a fun conversation. Honestly, I don't always talk about faith and things like that, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, I don't know, Travis. Probably there probably is.
Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh, I don't know. I guess, appreciate people listening with an open mind, and we're typically all on the same team if we can figure out some of those. And there's going to be differences, but it's been one of the fun things, taking people out on trips in the mountains. I get people from all over, and from very different political spectrums and from different countries, and we all get out in the woods, and you just realize we actually all get along. Believe it or not, we're not filtering each other through through filters, basically.
Through social media.
Yeah, just seeing each other as another person, and you can have a conversation around the fire, and it can enrich everybody, and you see that, that person. Yeah, that's been one of the most fun things about running the trips that I run, is recognizing that, and especially in times that have been, because I've been doing this since around COVID, or before COVID a little bit, and those have all been politically divisive, to see that that's not necessary.
Well, it looked like it said your recording stopped there for a second, maybe.
But, I got a phone call. I hit it end, but apparently.
Oh. Well, Jordan,
delete the whole thing.
That's it. Done. Throw it out. We're done. You ruined it. I tell you. Jordan, thank you so much for being on the Silvercore Podcast. You're welcome back anytime.
Thanks,
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, right. I appreciate it.